Jeremiah 29. Jeremiah 29. What about when there's not sunshine in our soul and our hearts are not filled with sunshine and music and gladness and all the good? Those are the good days. Those are the good times. We like those times. We wish all the times were like those times and all the days were like those days. But the truth is, reality says different. Reality says there will be times that are not sunshine and gladness and music and joy all the time. There are dark days. What do you do on those days? Have you been in those days? Were you singing that song in those days today? We're singing "There's Sunshine in My Soul" today, but you know that there's some darkness in your life and your thoughts and your mind and behaviors, your family, whatever. But you wish it was sunshine. It's not. These are the discussions that I think people were having around the days of Jeremiah chapter 29. We ought to put ourselves in their shoes for just a second. They lived a few thousand years ago, so it's kind of hard to do. But if you would, for a minute, just think about it. These are people that we read in the first few verses of Jeremiah chapter 29, that their families have been torn apart. Their lives have been wrecked. Many of them, all of the ones who received this letter, have been deported from their homes, taken away from all that they've ever known, their jobs, their life, their livelihood. They've taken them away from all of it. Some of them have been executed. Some of them died along the way. Their temple has been burned. Who knows if their houses exist anymore? And they're carried off to Babylon. Babylon is a place in Scripture that is negative. It is the empire of the enemy. Babylon is a place that you don't want to go. Babylon is the place from which God delivers his people early on. They are removed out of the empire, away from Babel, away from Babylon. And now they've gone back, and this is almost like a reversal of God's blessing. All right, they're going back to where God had brought them out of. This is a land that has, at this point in Jeremiah 29, a terrible history of violence, of mistreatment of all kinds of people, of brutality, of terror. This is a place where every remembrance of Babylon on the people of God's minds is a negative experience. This is a place that does not recognize the God of the people of Israel. It does not recognize their customs, their laws, their restrictions, their diets, anything like that. It is nothing like that. There's no comfort in Babylon. And that is the place where some of these people are. And so it's hard for us to do, but if you could, imagine being dragged away from everything familiar and wondering, where in the world is our God? Supposedly our God delivered us from this place, and now we're back in it. Supposedly our God is more powerful than all the other gods that these people worship, and so why are we here and they are not in our place? How come it seems like we're losing this battle and our culture war is tilted to the other side? Why does it feel like everything's going wrong that could possibly go wrong? Where's God in this? Where's Yahweh in this? Where are his people here? He promised us a land. He promised David a kingdom, and here we are in the kingdom of the Babylonians. Where's God in this? This is not just an abstract theological question that's fun to argue and throw back and forth and talk about religious concepts. This is a question that was raw and burning and painful for these people in Jeremiah 29 to ask. Some of us know the feeling of what it's like when what you thought to be a very stable thing was not stable at all, really. Some of us know the feeling of what it's like when life shifts and you have no control over it. You didn't want it, you didn't like it, you wish that it had not have happened, but it happened. And all you got to do is pick up the pieces. That's all you can do, right? You know what that is like. Some of us, through dark times in this room, some of us have had our faith wrecked. And you're trying to reconstruct after the deconstruction. And that's hard. That's difficult. Some of us in this room recognize that we live in a place where we live with people, or we deal with people every day who do not respect our values and our ethics. Some of us have had relationships that are fracturing on the rocks. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. And we're wondering, I tried to do it right. I tried to live my life well and tried to, biblical principles was how I wanted to govern what I do. But here I am, and life has shifted, and I didn't want it, and the relationship is on rocky soil, and I didn't like that either. And just all these dark moments have wrecked me. Where's God in this? Well, that's a good question. Does God have anything to say to this? Does God have anything to share with people who are undergoing times like that? God sends a letter. We've got the letter. This letter is sent about 600 years before the time of Jesus. The people of God were deported in a few waves from their homeland into different captive lands like Babylon. And at least a wave has gone forth from Jerusalem into Babylon. And these are the notable people in town. They're the skilled people, the workers, the craftsmen, the artists. The upper class folks, many of them have been deported first. And they would do this intentionally in order to prevent a rebellion. You cut the head off of the beast and it's not going to rise up and revolt. And so they did this on purpose. And so a lot of people have been deported into Babylon. And Jeremiah has not. He's still in Jerusalem. He sends a letter to Babylon, the captives in Babylon while he's in Jerusalem. Well, what would you expect in this letter from a prophet of God? You may expect he's going to say everything's okay. It's not a huge deal. Everything's going to turn out okay. If I'm in Babylon, that's probably the kind of letter that I would want. If everything's been wrecked in my life, I want somebody to tell me it's all going to be okay. Unless it's not. And so this is not a letter of comfort like we may hope. This is not a really optimistic letter. This is not a letter that promises an instant return. This is not a letter that says, hey, here's a magic escape from all your suffering. You don't have to deal with the hardship anymore. That is not what this letter is. But this is a letter that begins to shape the way that God's people are to view their life as exiles. When they have this burning question on their mind, where's God here? How am I supposed to live in this place that's a foreign place that doesn't respect me or my values or my customs or my religion? How in the world am I supposed to live right here and right now when everything that I've counted on has crumbled underneath me? Maybe you have had some of those same questions. How do we live when whatever we trust is not there anymore? When our world falls apart, God has words for that. They're difficult words, I will say that, all right? Set in the context of what the people are going through, this is not an easy letter to work through, but there's wisdom here, and there's guidance in this letter. I'd like for us to pick up at verses 5 and 6. All right, so we covered the front end, okay? Jeremiah has said this is a letter, it's coming from me over here in Jerusalem, by these hands. You've been exiled. It's a tough situation. But here's the instruction from God. It really begins in verses 5 and 6. What would you think if you received this message from God when you're deported into a different land, taken away from everything that is near and dear to you, your family's ripped apart, who knows if they even exist anymore? And the word of Jeremiah, the word of God through Jeremiah is, hey, build houses and settle down. When you're really upset, how does it usually go when somebody says, hey, settle down? Typically not very well. Build houses, settle down, plant gardens, eat the produce that comes from your gardens, marry, have children, increase in number, let your kids get married, build a family, put down roots. What does that sound like Jeremiah, or God through Jeremiah, what's it sound like God is telling the people who were exiled into Babylonian land here? It sounds a lot like, to me, that he's saying, on some level, as much as you wish that this were not true, you got to accept on some level where you are right now, because this is where you are. There will be hope later on, good message later on, but honestly, I don't think anybody likes this answer. Where's God in this? Everything's crumbled. Thought we had one we could count on. Thought we had something we could count on. But here we are in a foreign land, deported, mistreated. Nobody respects us or our culture or our values or our religion. And the message of God is build houses, plant some gardens, eat your produce, marry, build a family, have your kids build families, right? Increase in numbers. At first, this kind of sounds absurd, doesn't it? I mean, really, if we try to put ourselves in their shoes, this sounds quite absurd to me. How can we settle in a land that has destroyed our land? How can we plant gardens in the middle of the very people who are enslaving us every day? Jeremiah is not telling them to forget Jerusalem. He's not telling them to forget their lives. He's not telling them to forget their identity. He's reminding them and he's reminding us that a faithful life begins by trusting God wherever you are. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But like we talked about last week, this is no easy conversation. This is tough. There are no easy answers when you're in Babylon and you get a message that says, hey, build a house, plant a garden, eat the produce of the garden, marry, build a family, let your kids have kids, plant roots and do what you got to do while you are there. That's not an easy conversation to have. There are no easy answers here. There's a dual action here. It seems like it's Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian army that has gone in Jerusalem and carried the people into exile. That would be what is apparent to the people. It looks like Babylon's come in and they've destroyed us. But God says that it's him who brought them into this place. Now that's tough. Of God using the abject human evil of the Babylonians as the consequence of the action of his people to work out his purposes for those very people. This does not make exile less painful, but it may make exile meaningful. It doesn't make struggle less of a struggle, but it may make it meaningful. Life goes on. Life must go on. That's the only way life goes, is on. But life goes on within the framework of what God is trying to accomplish. And so he gives his people some instructions here. And if you read through those instructions, it seems to me that there are 3 or 4 things that are very apparent to them. What he tells them on some of the worst days of their lives is, number 1, you got to do whatever you can do. These are things that are tangible. These are things that are within your own control. You have the ability to build something, then build that thing. You have the ability to plant something, then plant that thing. You have the ability to put down roots here, then put down those roots. Everything he tells them to do is within their control. Second thing you'll notice is that everything that he tells them to do takes some time, right? They're not going to snap their fingers and wake up the next day and have a house built or a garden planted or a garden that produces any kind of thing worth of eating produced already. The whole family process is a long time coming, and so he tells them to do things that are going to take time. But the third thing that you'll see is that every one of these things that Jeremiah encourages them to do are things that promote peace and order in their lives. When everything has fallen apart, when what they thought was stable and secure, they figure out it is not stable and secure like I thought it was. Everything's fallen apart. God says, hey, do what you can do in your own life. It's going to take some time, but do what you can do in your own life to create some peace and order. Incidentally, what Jeremiah tells these people to do when they go into this new land in Babylon mirrors what God does in the creation. He builds. He produces things. He tells the people, go be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it. And that's basically the message of Jeremiah here. All right? Go do something good. We are lucky enough to have a picture of what this looks like. This is probably around the same time that a man named Daniel was deported from his home over into Babylon. He deals with a man named Nebuchadnezzar who's at the forefront of this entire discussion. And so we can look at Daniel's life as a picture of what it may look like for somebody to have to exist in this kind of situation. Daniel and his friends, ripped out of their homeland, brought to Babylon, immersed in this foreign culture that does not respect them and does not respect their ways. They learned the language of the land. They were given Babylonian names, and they took those names. They engaged in Babylonian education, went to school. They engaged in Babylonian public service. They went about doing things in their life. There were things that they did not do. All right, they would not forego, for instance, their dietary laws and restrictions. They insisted on not eating the king's diet. But they settled into Babylon, and they did what they could do within their control. It took a little bit of time to create some order in their lives. Took some discernment to figure out how they are to live as exiles in their land. They accepted the situation without surrendering their ultimate allegiance. That's a good thing to do. Not an easy thing. But for us, wherever God has placed us, here, at work, in our families, with our friends. On one level, it is our responsibility to settle in faithfully, to plant, to build, to grow, to do whatever is within our control, not to compromise the standards of God, not to compromise our morals or our ethics, but recognize that whatever we do or whatever we say can shine a light into this dark area. Whatever we choose to say or do, build or plant in our lives can shine light wherever there's darkness in our lives. All right, so that's one of the things that Jeremiah tells the people to do. And that's kind of the easy part of the letter, right? It sounds kind of hard, I think, on the surface, but that's the easy part. When you go to the next verse, I think you find the hard one. Look at Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7. First, settle in, and then he says, seek the prosperity. Seek the good, the welfare, whatever your translation has. They all kind of mean virtually the same thing. Seek the peace and the prosperity, the welfare, the good of the city to which I've carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it. Because if it prospers, then you too will prosper. All right, remember, this is not a letter that is written just into a vacuum where nothing's going on in the lives of the people who are reading this letter. These are people who've been ripped apart from their families, who have had their homes burned down, who had their most sacred places, the temple, burned down, who have had everything that is near and dear to them ripped away from them. These are people who are struggling every day of their life. And the message is, hey, seek the welfare, seek the peace of those people. The very people who destroyed your homes, did away with your families, dragged hundreds of you from your homes, away from everything familiar, hundreds of miles away. And Jeremiah says, pray for them, work for their welfare, bless them. How would you respond? If we lived in a culture that was so harsh to people of faith like us, if we lived in a culture who did not allow us to practice what we wanted to practice, if we lived in a culture that was not just, not supportive of us, but also antagonistic to us, if the preacher got up and said, hey, pray for those people, work for their good, bless them as much as you can, how would you respond? This feels like a difficult situation. All right, there's a psalm. It's a difficult psalm. It's probably the most difficult psalm in all 150. It's a psalm that we do not use for a call to worship. And here's why. Psalm 137 is a psalm that shows us what the exiles thought about their captors. All right? Psalm 137. This is raw human emotion because families have been ripped apart. This is what they thought. And I'm reading this psalm to you, with you. I'm reading this psalm with you because I want you to see what the emotions were and how that would have impacted their emotions or their thoughts whenever they got this letter sent to them. Psalm 137, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and we wept and we remembered Zion. Zion's where they came from. Homeland, families, houses, jobs, vineyards, whatever. On the willows there we hung up our lyres. There our captors required of us songs, our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of your songs of Zion. All right, this is not like we like your voice. This is not we like how you sing. This is antagonistic. This is you are here in our land. Get down the harp and the lyre and the guitar and sing us one of those songs that you used to sing to your God. How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Here's the emotion. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem, how they said, lay it bare down to the foundations. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed, blessed shall be he who repays you with what you've done to us. And then he, most likely, replays for the Babylonians what they have done to the Israelite children. Blessed is the one who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock. That's the emotion. That's the emotion of the people who get this letter in Jeremiah chapter 29. They're not happy. This is not a feel good. They haven't got sunshine in their soul today. They have nothing but darkness. That's what it is. There's no gladness. There's no song on their hearts. They're not singing and being happy. That's the people who get the letter in Jeremiah chapter 29. And God says, seek the good of those people. The ones who ripped you apart, seek their good. The ones who only meant evil for you, pray for them. The ones who destroyed everything that is near and dear to you, bless those people. Exile. No easy days there, but it's a mission. God's people are called by Jeremiah chapter 29, even among their enemies, to be a light to those people, to shine their light, to be a light to the nations that they've been captive in now. Pray for the city. Work for the welfare of the people around you. Serve other people, even if those people are your enemies, and just about everybody in town was at that point. Those are the acts of faithful presence. Those are the ways that the people of God were going to participate in God blessing the world through them. Well, what about us? All right, what might be the message here for us today? Well, what Jeremiah says in Jeremiah chapter 29 is for those exiles, but it is not the only place that you will find inspired people like Jeremiah, like Paul, writing about how we are to live as exiles. Peter's got whole letters about how to live as an exile, how to live in a place that doesn't respect your values, your ethics, your religion. Right? The whole writing of Peter is about that. Paul routinely instructs his readers to pray for their leaders. Right? And they live in Rome. Those were not friendly people in the Roman government hierarchy. And Paul says, pray for those guys, that you can live a peaceful and quiet life. All right? So maybe some takeaways for us. We could pray. We can pray for our leaders. We can pray for our neighbors. In your daily prayers, do you lift up local, government officials, school boards, law enforcement, local government, the people who have influence over our community and what we do? Daniel's a good picture of this. Daniel prays 3 times every day. And Daniel has interactions with the leadership of the day. Nebuchadnezzar, he gets to interpret dreams for Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know this to be the case. We don't have the written words of Daniel spelled out for us. We don't know exactly what Daniel's prayers consisted of every day, but it's possible that it was for Babylon. I would guess that it's probable that it was for Babylon, the leaders, Nebuchadnezzar, because that becomes a focus of his story. Maybe Daniel is doing exactly what God through Jeremiah instructs. Pray for them. Seek their good. Seek out the welfare of the city. So you can pray for your leaders, your neighbors. You can serve. Can you find ways to actively contribute to schools and local charities, even the church here, right? You can work with integrity in your job. You can do the right thing when nobody's looking. You can be diligent and respond to mistreatment with kindness, not return evil for evil. You can invest in relationships. This is what Jeremiah says. Marry people. Create a family. Invest in your family. Invest in your relationships. You can seek the good things, no matter what they are. You can cultivate good things. You can build good things in your life. You can build good things, help build good things in the life of other people. You can maintain those things. In Jeremiah's letter, it's plant a garden, build a house, do some good for other people. Seek the welfare of the city by contributing to the life of the city. All right, these are all good things for us to do. Daniel, again, is a good example of this. Daniel prays faithfully. Daniel, when he's able to give advice to people in leadership positions, he advises with wisdom. And he serves his captors apparently without bitterness somehow. Daniel's an example of this. Daniel gains influence, not because he resented his situation and despised where he was, but because he was faithful to God wherever he was going to find himself. And so Daniel becomes God's method of spreading peace and order in a foreign land. This is not only Daniel. I mean, we read about this when Joseph is sold into Egyptian slavery, right? He does exactly what the letter in Jeremiah tells us to do hundreds of years before it's ever written. We find this in Nehemiah when he's serving in the king's court in Persia. Nehemiah is organizing renewal in that place. We see this in the life of the story of Queen Esther, who was at a certain place at a certain time for a reason of preserving her people. But she had to build, and she had to think, and she had to pray about those things. Every one of these people accepted the reality of their exile. They didn't like it. They didn't have to like it. But they had to accept the reality of where they were. And once they accepted that reality, they were able to work within it faithfully. They were able to take where they were, and they became a channel of God's blessing to the people around them. That was true of Daniel. That is true of Esther. It's true of Joseph. It's true of Nehemiah. And it is true of Jesus, who was born into a land of Roman occupation. And instead of spending all day talking about how bad it was on the news, Jesus built good things. He did good things. He said good things. He promoted peace. He promoted order in the life of people. He told people when they asked, what's the most important thing in the world that we do? He said, it's love the Lord your God, and it's to love your neighbor as yourself. And when they wanted to draw lines about who those neighbors really were, Jesus said, well, it's even the ones that you would count as an enemy. He didn't say, act like the Romans aren't here. He didn't say, act like everything's fine and good and dandy in your life. He never said that. He said, take where you are and be a faithful channel of God's blessing within it. In your town, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, those are the places that God invites us to be faithful, to pray, to seek the good of the people around us, and to shine as lights into the world. And so, where do you find yourself? We are called to be residents here. Peter says we are to sometimes act like and view ourselves as strangers in the land. And sometimes it may feel that way, but what do? Living in exile is not a passive thing. It is an active thing where we build and we plant and we grow and we serve and we help and we pray and we invest in the lives of people around us. And so wherever we find ourselves, what might God want us to do today? Do we resist God's placement? Do we resent maybe where we are today and wish, like anything, that we were someplace different, in some different situation? Or do we accept what we've got, the hand that's been dealt to us? Do we settle in, as Jeremiah says, and do we seek the good, the welfare of our surroundings? Do we pray each day for our own Babylons, working for their welfare, becoming ways that God can use us to bring his blessing into the world? What if it's the case that the place that we are resisting is where really God is calling us to participate in his mission, to spread his kingdom and to shine his light? What if the people that we fear or resent or have a hard time getting along with or can't stand, what if those people are really the people that God intends to reach through us? What if we viewed life that way? If you did, what would be good for you to do today? That's the whole message of the letter, right? There is an optimistic tone at some point when Jeremiah says, hey, it's gonna be okay, but it's gonna be 70 years before it's gonna be okay, right? You're gonna go back home. The people are gonna leave Babylon. They're not gonna be captive anymore. They're gonna go back home, but it's gonna be about 3 generations before that happens. And so while you're there for 70 years, while you're there for this generation and the next and your grandkids, do something good. You know your situation. You know where the darkness is in your life. You know where the darkness is in your relationships. You know where the struggles are in your family. You know where they are. What would be good for you today? Where could the light shine for you today? God's command is pretty radical in Jeremiah's time. Just settle in, settle down, plant, build, bless, and pray. That's good. Will we accept the call of Jeremiah's letter and approach our Babylons with courage and faith and hope for something better? And will we allow ourselves to do our part to make those things better? If God were writing us a letter, what would he say would be good for us to do today? It's that simple. It is that simple. If you can pinpoint what it is that you think God would say, this is the good thing you ought to do today, then go do that thing. Get started. Like, you don't have to wait. You can wake up today, tomorrow, and you can do that thing that you're supposed to do, that you know is the right, the good, the meaningful thing for you to do. For some of you this morning, it may be that the good thing for you today is to give your life over to God. And it may be that today's the day that you have got faith in God and you recognize him as a God who loves and cares and reaches out and wants us to be with him. And you want to seek his kingdom and you want to be baptized into Christ today, a selfless death to all things that are selfish in our lives. That's the good thing. That's a good thing. And you want to get rid of those things, and you want to put off those old things, and you come up out of the waters, a new creation, ready to be formed into the image of Jesus, more and more and more formed into the image of Jesus as you put on behaviors that are more Christ-like, and your words become more Christ-like words, and your life becomes a more Christ-like life. You also could be here today, and you know that there are good things in your life that if you got a letter, it's probably what God would say, hey, do this. But you hadn't done those things. Or there are things that God may say, hey, change this, and you hadn't changed those things. Or, hey, start doing this, and you hadn't started that thing yet. Hey, stop doing that thing, and you haven't stopped it yet. And maybe you know what the good thing that you ought to be doing today is. You just hadn't done it yet. Maybe this is a time of repentance for you, to stop doing the wrong thing and start doing the good thing and be more Christ-like in your behavior in those ways. There could be something else going on in your life that you know is an issue for you, and you want us to be praying for that and encouraging you through that. And so this morning, if there's any way that you want to respond to the invitation, please come let us know while we stand.